Hey, Sandy.
Hi, Brandy.
How are you?
I'm fantastic. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
I am not camera ready, so forgive me.
All good. All good. You got a nice picture up there.
Now I do.
We're just going to wait for a couple more people to join and then we'll get going.
You bet.
Sandy, did you know that I have a YouTube channel? So if you missed one of these, you can always go back and listen to the recording.
Ah, you know what? I saw the YouTube link in your message to me, and you just explained what that is. So thank you.
Yep. So you can always get to them if you can't make it on a Monday. And I always post the slides on LinkedIn as well, so you can get the slide deck.
Fantastic. You're awesome. You make it so super easy. Thank you.
I try to just make it super easy for everyone. I'm going to find my phone really quick because there were a couple people that were planning on joining. So let me just text them really quick, okay?
Okay, sounds good. I'm multitasking, having lunch.
Hey, Susan.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. How are you?
Okay, how are you doing?
I'm doing great.
I love the new year when system stuff quits working because test licenses expire all over the place. It's like, oh, man.
I'm sorry.
I mean, it happens every year, guys. Can't we plan?
I know. Who's the other lady who always joins us? I wanted to check on her.
I know who you mean. I can't remember her name.
Yeah, the HR lady.
Her.
No, not Cindy. That's my aunt.
That's right. There's some ladies like the polar opposite of me. Every time she says this is my number 1, 2, or 3, it's like my bottom.
Where's communication for you?
Communication, it's in the middle of the pack somewhere. Let me see.
Yeah, mine's about 11.
Communication, where'd you go?
Cindy, this is one of your top 5, right?
24.
Okay.
I guess that's the bottom, not middle.
Yeah. And for Brad, it's one of his top 5. So I thought he was joining. He actually joined last week when we didn't have the session. So he might not be able to join today. Okay. Well, I guess we'll get going on this. So Sandy, is this one of your top 5 or 10, or is this somewhere in the middle or bottom for you?
I need to remind myself, Randy, I'm looking for my notes from my first session with you. So give me a minute to dig that out.
No worries. Okay, I just wanted to know if it's one that you're going to be able to help us understand, or if it's one that you need help understanding. Okay, so I will get going, and I want to show you guys the first thing is that, by the way, Cindy, if you said anything, you were on mute, so I didn't hear you.
So if this is like toward the bottom of the pack, that means you're not good at this, or you're not naturally doing these things? What does that mean?
This means that your brain is not wired to think this way. Now, let me rephrase that, because everybody's brain is wired to think this way. But what I mean is, for whatever reason, from the age of 0 to 14, your brain didn't get developed to think this way. So you might have a little tiny neural pathway that does this a little bit of the time, or thinks this way a little bit of the time, but it's not dominant for you. It's not something that's really important to you. It's not something that, is like top priority. Okay. Cindy, I'm just doing a sound check on you because I still haven't heard you.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Communication is my number 3.
Okay. So for Cindy, it's going to be like really, really important to her to not only do it, but to also receive it. Okay. So you can see that it is found 13% of the time in a person's top 5 strengths. So that does put it at a little bit more of the rare end. That means that generally you can think of 13% of the population is great at communicating, and the other 87% of the population is not a great communicator. Okay. As we do every single time, there's 4 different categories that the different strengths fall into. And we can see that communication is an influential strength. Okay. It's one of those that, because they clearly communicate, and this is interesting because you can have an introverted and an extroverted clear communicator. Extroverted clear communicators are easy to spot because they're loud and they're communicating and they're really good communicators. The introverted ones might be better writers, right? You might see really clear, concise, outlined, full paragraphs, and they're writing, but they're not necessarily doing it verbally. So we need to make sure that we don't define communication by extroverted, introverted. It's easier to spot when they're talking a lot and they have clear communication, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're a bad communicator if they're quiet. Okay. And because they fall into this first work zone here, they love to partner up with like strategic thinkers and futuristic thinkers, because what they love to do is they like to take that big picture that they see pretty easily, and they like to clearly set direction for others to follow. So they name the who, what, where, when, why, how, when they are in conversation with you, so that you know exactly where they stand, exactly what they're trying to say, exactly what you need to do. It's just a very, very clear line of communication. And because they communicate so clearly, they're highly influential. They are, we follow them. We say, oh, I know exactly what to do, or I know, what needs to be done here, or I understand, whatever it is that they're trying to explain that I need to understand in order to go take action. So that's why it falls into that directive zone. Okay, so here's the definition. People with strong communication strengths are natural conversationalists and presenters. It is easy for them to put their thoughts into words. So what you're typically going to see of these people is that they're going to share their thoughts. They're going to explain. They're going to describe. They enjoy hosting events, public speaking, or writing. What they really, really love is finding the most precise word to describe whatever it is that they're trying to say at that time. And they love it when they grab and capture your attention, whether it's one-on-one or whether it's in a big setting. They love capturing the room's attention. They love it when people are listening to them. They want to tell these stories that have these impactful insights or impactful moments that makes the audience gasp or react. Like that's an indicator that tells them that they're communicating really effectively. We tend to enjoy listening to them because they're usually great, great speakers, and they're interesting to listen to and great communicators. Any questions on the communication person as a whole, as how they might be defined, or any questions about how this is different than some other strength?
Brandy, first of all, I'm devastated that I cannot find my assessment results. I cannot find them. You emailed them to me. I cannot find it. If you can resend it, I would appreciate it.
Let me see. I'll look. Yeah.
So that's number one.
Okay.
Number two, I do not think communication was a strength for my memory. This is who I want to be. This is precisely who I am skilling up and want to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a desire to do this too. I have a strong desire to be a very, very clear, concise communicator. But quite frankly, sometimes I have to dig real deep to even want to communicate. And I don't think that that's necessarily the case for someone who has communication. Any of the communicators have any feedback on that? You guys enjoy communicating, correct?
Oh, yes, very much so. I'm talk.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But at the same time, I'm very much, I don't say it, but I look at somebody when I communicate with that look of, you do understand, correct?
Yes, you need to know that what you're saying is actually sinking in. That's important.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And I incorporate a lot in my communications stories from, well, when I was a kid, or one time my parents, blah, blah, blah. And I storytell a lot.
Gotcha.
And I appreciate that about those who communicate and are strong communicators. I appreciate the storytelling, but it's not just the storytelling for the purpose of emphasizing a point or to create interest or whatever. The storytelling that resonates most with me is when you have a journey or transformation where you're talking about, I started here, here's my journey along the way, here's what I learned, here's where I messed up, here's where I nailed it, and then how that journey influenced where they are today. So it's the transformation of the storytelling that I really appreciate most.
And what you might be saying, Sandy, is things that you appreciate based on your own strengths. So I'll give you another example. I appreciate storytelling and communication when I learn something because I'm a learner. And if you have maximizer as a strength and you appreciate transformation, then you will appreciate when you learn something that is transformative that you can take with you to share with others.
That's it, because it's their transformation, it's their journey that inspires me and that I learn from, and that helps me see all the ups and downs and the valleys and the peaks in my experiences. Their journey and their transformation helps me see how I can take mine and turn it into something that allows me to grow.
Yes.
Transform.
Yeah. Yep. That makes complete sense.
Sometimes it's hard to reflect on your own experiences in your life and see the transformation or growth in it. Sometimes it helps you see others, understand yourself by understanding others' growth in their
Absolutely.
journey.
It allows us to relate. It allows us to reflect. And this is why people hire coaches, because it's really hard to see yourself the way other people see you. And they can't necessarily see what is working. You know, you have a harder time seeing what's working for you or what's not working for you. Where a coach or a friend can point that out pretty, you know, it's pretty obvious to them.
Exactly.
So, yeah, so let me share a few more things with you guys. So communication is typically intensified when it is paired with activator. Okay, because communication seek to inspire people to take action, when they also have activator in their top 5 and they're giving those, you know, people that natural nudge to take action, it's just intense. It's an intensified ability to help people take action or get going, because now they're setting the direction and nudging them. It's also intensified when paired with command, because commanders are naturally commanding the room, commanding what needs to be done, directing, and communication is also a direction setter through that clear communication. They're both extroverted. So when they're paired together, it's a lot of talking, a lot of communicating, and a lot of commanding going on. When you have communication paired with futuristic, it's also intensified, because not only now do you have the good, clear, concise communication, but you're painting that verbal picture in your mind about what the product or service or technology should look like. So now you're going, here's what it should look like. Here's what I'm thinking. And I can paint that verbal picture. I can paint the picture mentally and maybe even, you know, get it down on paper, but I can also communicate it now. So it becomes a very powerful combination. And then, as we've talked about before in these sessions, the ideator is going, you know, I'm ideating this and I'm ideating that, and I'm coming up with all these ideas, and they want to share those ideas and they want to get them all out. Well, now if you have communication, you can clearly, concisely communicate all those ideas. So you're going to have a pretty intense idea communicator when those two strengths are paired together. Communication will intensify individualization. So individualization are also storytellers. So when you get a communicator and an individualizer, you get two strengths with storytelling. You get this maximized storyteller. Learners like myself, we love to teach and consult. So if I also had communication in my top 5, I'd be extremely good teacher, communicator, presenter. And if I had communication and relator both in my top 5, not only am I going to communicate and say the who, what, where, when, why, how, but I'm also going to be open and transparent and vulnerable, which makes a very authentic communicator. Someone with self-assurance and communication paired together are going to have extremely strong presence and influence. They have a ton of confidence. They have a lot of confidence communicating and communicating in front of an audience. And they also just have this internal guide as to, you know, what is right in that moment. That's that self-assurance. It's the little internal compass that they have. So they're just going to feel extremely confident about whatever it is they're saying in that moment. People who have significance love being in the spotlight. They love being visible. Communicators typically do as well. So if you have someone with both, you know, they're going to be very highly extroverted, want to be out front, want to be visible, want to be communicating, and want to be seen. And then we've talked about woo before. Woo is that extremely energetic person who is very, very social and loves to get into, you know, conference situation or parties and loves to move around the room as a social butterfly. So when they have communication, that's going to be on steroids. And you're going to have someone who just loves to talk. Any thoughts before we move on from the intensification section?
I missed the one about individualization.
Okay, David. So when you have both communication and individualization, you are a master storyteller, because individualization people are really good at storytelling. Communication are really good at storytelling. So if you have both, then you have a huge focus on storytelling.
Boy, do you.
Okay, thank you. Because I was, I don't have both, but I have 2 in that list that you just had.
Trust me, David, I've got woo, individual, and communication in the top 5 and it's
Wow.
it's it can be a lot.
Andy, you need to let him just take over from here.
I know,
Right.
I know. In fact, Brad helped me put together these slides, so he could probably.
How about that?
No,
it was perfect for me. All she did was ask me a bunch of questions on the phone and let me go. So it's like an interview. That's like, my heroes are like those. I was telling her, my heroes are like those old British classic actors that you hear them go on a story, they just savor it. They take their time. They just sit there. Like if you hear like Sir Patrick Stewart or Ian McKellen or some of those guys, they just will sit there and take their time, and they have that musical British accent where they tell it, and they'll savor it for 10 minutes. They'll tell you a story for 10 minutes and just get to everything, but they do it perfectly. They don't bore the hell out of you doing it. They follow along, they keep the narrative thread going. And I was telling Brandy, one of my biggest frustrations is when my friends don't have the attention span to sit through a proper story.
Amen.
They have to sit there and they just wander on. Oh, this is my favorite song. Shut up! I'm telling you a story. Hold on.
Have you seen them when they do this?
No, I'll break their fingers if they do that.
They're like, get to the point, David.
They know not to do that with me.
No, I have the woo too, so that's 3 in that same list.
So actually, communication and woo are paired together in a person's top 5 strengths 45% of the time. So whenever I get someone with communication or I get someone with woo, it's almost guaranteed that they have the opposite one in the top 10. Communication and woo are usually close by. Not all the time, but it can be found frequently. And like me and my aunt were discussing the other day, her sister has woo where she has communication. So although they didn't get paired together, they actually got dispersed in the family, one to each daughter. So then the strength that you're hardly ever going to see with communication is deliberative. Communication they're quick, they're making decisions quick, they're wanting to communicate things quickly, they're wanting to get things out on the table. It's like, let's go. We're deliberative are going to be like, let me just wait, let me just pause, let me not communicate until I know exactly if what I'm saying is right. I'm going to be careful. So they're much slower. They're the pullback to that communication of, and it's probably drives communication people crazy when a deliberative person pauses or waits. They're like, did you hear me? Are we going? Are we still having this conversation? And the deliberative person is like, I'm deliberating. I'm thinking, just give me a moment. And the communication person is like, oh my God, I'm already over here, while you're still deliberating.
You start playing guess their thought, basically. Yeah. Like, are you agreeing? You're not agreeing. You don't like this. Or are you trying to fill in the blank while they are deliberating? Yeah.
Right. And when all they're doing is just thinking so that they get you. And a lot of times communicators will think, or not just communicators, but anybody who thinks really fast and talks really fast, they may think that the other person is strategically trying to derive something as why they're taking forever. But in reality, the deliberative person is just thinking to make sure that what they say is of value, Okay, so I like to list out the connectors. So communications seek to inspire people to take action on their words. So they actually really appreciate activators who naturally give people that nudge they need to get started. So if you have a communicator over here and an activator over here, they tend to like each other. They tend to gravitate towards each other and get along. They both also have that natural influence. Now, because input people require a lot of information, they're going to ask a lot of questions, as well as context people. They need a lot of context. So this gives the opportunity for the communication person to talk, right? They get to give a lot of information or they get to give a lot of context. Learner might kind of go in here as well. Actually, I think it's on the next slide. I think I put them in alphabetical. I think it's on the next slide. All right, communicators love attentive audiences. And the people who tend to listen and listen intently are your empaths, your developers, your deliberative people, and your intellects. So those could be good audiences for communicators. And then Futuristic people appreciate how communication verbally paint the picture, while communication appreciates how the futurists clearly imagine, you know, what it is that visual description of what it is that they're picturing in the future. So those, and they're both directive strengths. So those two personalities tend to get along as well, communication and futuristic. Yep, there's our learner. Learners love to learn about what communicator is teaching when the communication is teaching. And communication loves that captive audience. Now it's very likely that you're going to find communication, woo, and positivity, those three together. So positivity and communication are connecting strength. Communicators love and appreciate the positivity of positivity people, and positivity appreciate the communicator's inspiring messages. Communication and strategic are both big picture thinkers. So again, the strategic person really, really appreciates a communicator who can understand the big picture strategy and then communicate it, because the strategic person might not have communication as a strength, where the communication appreciates the topic of the strategy to be able to communicate that out to get everybody going in the right direction. Those are good partners. And then obviously communication and woo both love being social and talking, so they make great party mates. Okay, where you might find a little disruption could be when a communicator is talking to an analytical person, because the analytical person, instead of being entertained and interested and engaged with the communicator, they might be picking apart everything that person says to try to find the holes in the gaps in the communication, which could really frustrate the communicator. There could be friction between command and communication because they're both trying to capture the room's attention. They're both trying to have the presence and influence. So if they're not on the same page, there could be friction between the two of them. Communication with another communicator could go well, or it could go completely awry. We've talked about the deliberative. And then the ideation, you know, before we talked about if you have it in the same top 5, it could be a win, but also communicators might not appreciate it if the ideators are jumping around all over the place with that abstract thought, where communicators are really trying to stay on the line of the storyline. That could be frustrating. Brad, you have both though, right? Communication and ideation?
Yes, I do.
So
pain in the ass.
So you can you can jump around, but you also can create that storyline too. You kind of have both.
Yeah, my communication's higher up by, I think my ideation is like 7. So it's a top 10, but it's not as high as communication. So I'm pretty good about laying out what I'm trying to say in outline form. So I'm not going down too many rabbit holes.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. The position of the strength matters. So when you look at somebody's strengths, the things that are on top of something else are going to override the things that are below it. That's exactly right.
So yeah, it's 8. Communication's 2, ideation's 8. So they're there, okay, but it's just not, they're not fist fighting each other like woo and communication would be.
Right, right.
Randy, did you say something about something being over the top of something else? What was that?
Yeah, so the order of your strengths matters, David. So if you have your strength number 1 or strength number 2, in your body, in your brain, those are always going to take precedence over the strengths that are like your number 5th strength or your number 6th or 7th strength.
I see.
It's kind of a natural override. Okay.
Okay. Yeah,
when we become strength intelligent, we can control that more, right? Mm-hmm. We can say, okay, I'm in this situation which requires this strength of mine, not this one. So let me suppress this one for a minute while I bring out this other one to be successful in that moment. But that's when we really understand our strengths and when they're working for us and when they're not working for us.
I'm sure you've answered the question before, but there's no way to train yourself to be more of a trait that you wish you had more of?
Well, you can, for example, I can become a better communicator by practicing and presenting and learning from a communication person how to do that. but I will never be naturally as good as they are. They have a natural tendency towards it. It's very intuitive. Their brain just, is ultra engaged when it comes to that aspect. And so for me to try to compete with that person on that thing, it's kind of an empty attempt. I mean, I might do well, but they always are going to have an edge on me because that's a natural area for that person.
Good point.
Okay, I'll give you just a completely different example that's away from strengths. Let's take math, right? Some of you are great at math, some of you suck at math. You could practice math all day long and you could get good enough, but you're never going to be a mathematician. The person that was just great at math at 2 is going to be the mathematician.
Good point.
Okay, there could be friction between an intellect and a communicator. Communicators need a captive audience to stay engaged, and intellects make great listeners for the most part, but they may find it difficult to engage with someone that talks to them for a long period of time without letting them talk. So if the communicator is just talking, it might be a little too much for the intellect, and they might be like, okay, I'm just kind of done listening. Okay. And then you have restorative that you could have potential conflict with. Again, restorative are very critical. And if the communicator is looking to, be the entertainment and be the joy of the moment, and then the restorative person is, sitting there trying to get to the root cause or picking them apart or, finding what's wrong with them or not giving them the reaction, it might not be fun for either one of the two people.
Brandy, is
Yes.
it odd to have, my restorative is 2, my communication is 3?
Yeah, I don't know what the statistic is of how often or unoften those are paired together. So I don't have an answer for that. Okay. I don't know if it's a weird pairing. Someday I'll have more data and I'll be able to tell you that, but I don't know that answer today.
Okay.
So communicators are not at their best when they don't get an opportunity to speak, when they don't get to describe their thoughts or explain themselves, when they don't get to host or public speak or write. If their presence or their drama and energy is not welcome, that's not fun. If their stories aren't welcome, that's not fun. If they're not influencing people or grabbing people's attention, they're not having a good time. They don't like to get into the weeds. They like to keep things at a higher level unless they have another strength that gets them down into the weeds. And, they love being around people. They love being able to present, talk, and communicate. So if they're not getting to do these things, then it's not fun. Like Brad said, if people don't have the attention span to listen, to listen to them. This is why communication are actually great public speakers, because public speaking doesn't require a response back from the audience other than just a gasp reaction, right? Or a laugh. The communicator gets to get up there and gets to tell a full story for an hour with a captive audience. It's really the best place for a communication person to be at their best. Okay.
Good question.
Yes.
Since I was waiting until we got to not their best environment I found that if you are a coworker with maybe an activator or achiever or something like that, someone who's very just do it. Sometimes I feel like the communicator falls into the talk is cheap type of area where they're like, well, quit talking about it, just do it. And I don't know how to go about it, because that's not my strength, is doing it. My strength is communicating it so it gets done properly, precisely. But I run into that, well, you obviously are a fraud because you're just talking about it and you're not actually doing it. I've done that before, and I've learned on it, but it's still sometimes a roadblock sometimes if that person's a very strong personality.
And the other thing about that is, again, the way we get set up in a work environment, Brad, because the expectations are for everybody to do the work, which in my opinion is the wrong expectation. Some people are engineers and are made to code. You're not. So why would I expect you to do that? Right? What I need you to do is to build the presentation, present it, make sure everybody understands what we need to do and where we need to go. But you need to be in a position where you're not expected to execute or do the work that someone else is expected to do that.
Right.
So to me,
I just didn't know how to deal with that.
Yeah, that's tough. That's tough because that's a conversation with your manager and with the team and saying, that's not my strongest area to go execute on this. My strongest area is to, describe it and clearly communicate it and get the strategy out there to everybody. But I'm not going to necessarily go be the engineer and do it. And I think it's putting yourself in a position to be appreciated for your strengths. So for example, let's say you're in a marketing department, your job is to communicate the marketing message. Well, that's easy for you and you're not expected to go engineer the product. So it could be just a mismatch of what you're doing as well, the role that you have.
Right.
If you're in an operations role, no good for you.
You're not lying.
Okay, so, you're not going to excel when you don't get to do all the things we just said, when you don't get to share your thoughts, explain, describe, when you don't get to do something like where you're hosting a large event and being up front in front of an audience. You're not going to be at your best when, sorry, I flipped it. We're on the best stuff, aren't we? So you are at your best. Sorry, I always try to end on a good note, where they get to share their thoughts, explain, describe, where you guys get to host, you get to speak to a large audience, where your stories are appreciated, where your images are appreciated, where your words are appreciated, whether you're speaking or writing. You guys are at your best when you have an audience that loves listening to you talk. Okay, so good roles are teaching, selling, writing, marketing, ministering, and broadcasting. Right? So when you're in your zone, you should hear things like, wow, you're great to listen to. Your stories are great. You communicate so clearly and concisely. The words you use are so interesting. Your energy is extremely positive. You have great presence. You're charismatic. You're influential. You're highly entertaining, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These are the types of things you're going to hear when you are flexing your strength of communication in an environment that needs that strength and appreciates it. When you're flexing the strength and it's not appreciated, you're going to hear the negative stuff, right? This was Brad's word, by the way. You are loquacious. There's no way in hell I came up with that word, guys. You talk too much. You don't listen well. You are self-absorbed. You're a show-off. You talk at me. You use too many words. You're too dramatic. You're too loud, right? These are the things you hear when you're using your strength because you're excited, you're engaged, you're trying to use it, but it's just not welcome.
You'll hear them a lot when you're hanging out with engineers.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So what do you guys like to be known for, acknowledged for, and recognized for? Your clear, concise communication. You love it when people know where to go, what direction to go based on your communication. Your masterful storytelling. The fact that you're inspiring others or influencing others with your communication. The fact that they understand exactly what they need to do or they've learned what they need to learn based on either your written or verbal communication. What else? Cindy, is there anything else you love to hear or love to be known for based on your good communication?
That I made a difference, or at least that I helped.
Yep. Yep. And again, so Cindy, you guys, she also has restorative. So she really likes to solve problems and make sure that what she has said is making an impact or delivering some sort of value to a person, to make a difference in a person's life based on her restorative strength. And she also has a bunch of relationship building strengths around that as well. People strengths. Okay. All right. So when communicators communicate, They typically tell stories or paint vivid verbal pictures. They use descriptive and colorful words. They're very detailed. They answer the who, what, where, when, why, how. They like to choose the perfect words. They like to share their thoughts and explain and describe. So this is how you can identify when you are dealing with a high communicator. And this is important because you want to be able to go, this person needs to be able to communicate. So I need to listen if I want to engage this person. And I also need to let them know when what they're saying is actually having an impact, because that improves their communication over time. So if I want to communicate well with that communicator, this is challenging because they need to communicate. So I need to listen to a communicator. I need to give them my full attention and show interest. I need to react dramatically to the words they're saying. I need to laugh. I need to gasp. I need to go, oh my gosh, you're kidding. Like, I need to give them that reaction so they know that I'm listening and I'm engaged. I need to help them bring out their best communication whenever possible. I need to try not to answer or hurry them along. I just need to listen. I can build on what they're saying. If they say something, I can say, oh, so this and this and this is what you just said. How about this? Then they're going to know that I'm listening, that I'm engaged in the conversation. I need to not say, huh? What did you say? That shows them that I'm not listening and they completely shut down. Maybe I ask them to share their thoughts or their opinions. I ask them to, like I did with Brad, I said, I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. You just get to talk. That is a way to engage him during our conversation. Any other thoughts about the best way to communicate with a communicator?
I know I don't have to have the dramatic oohs and ahs when I'm talking, but I found that I really do appreciate when someone maybe just says the point I'm making back to me to let me know that they understood. So, well, I was here and then they did this and this happened and this happened. And the person goes, well, that wouldn't even make sense if you were doing, oh yeah, that was my point. Yes, thank you. Like they actually, they're engaged. It's like you said, it's something to prove that they're not in their head just either thinking about a grocery list or, they're just waiting for you to quit talking so that they can talk. The blah, 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 my line interaction. Just the fact that they're engaged with you it just does wonders. Yeah,
that active listening. So they're listening, but they're also affirming that they're listening.
And it's not the it's not I think I told you the Wayne's World 2 where the DJ just keeps going and finally Wayne just goes, you're not even listening to us. We could be saying whatever we want and you just be doing Yeah. So yeah, as long as they're not just clearly doing something they've been taught, like a trick, we'll see through that pretty quickly if you're a communicator.
I like it when they say, that's a great point. I never thought of it that way. Mm-hmm. That's a great thing, or a discovery, like you can tell that you've opened their eyes to something. Mm-hmm. Or their ears.
Yep.
And both your comments just led to wow, I made a difference.
Yeah. I have significance on mine, so.
Brandy used the word inspire, which I think is huge because I know that's what I get my biggest kick out of, is inspiring people either to do or to think of something a different way, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So these are just some questions that you can ask. Again, you can ask whatever questions you want for whatever context, but I wanted to put these on here so that you guys have them in case you are trying to proactively engage a communicator, especially if you've shut them down in the past and you're trying to rekindle that. There's a couple of key questions that you can ask them to get them chatting. Okay. And, you know, if you are trying to sell and influence as a communicator, it's pretty easily, right? You easily set direction, you easily communicate, explain, describe things. You're a natural influencer. I highly recommend public speaking. If you are trying to sell products or services, that's going to be a great area for you. And of course, using stories and images and examples and metaphors to describe the products and services of how they've helped others, that's going to be huge. You know, paying attention to the client that you're talking to and how they're reacting so that you know how to adjust the communication is going to be a big deal. You know, you can help your clients or potential customers express their thoughts and needs and concerns. If you can see them kind of trying to say it but not clearly communicate it, you can always say, is this what you mean? And help them express their thoughts. That's going to be a big deal, because then it expresses an understanding from you to them. Okay. And if we're trying to sell or influence a communicator, we need to clearly and concisely state our value proposition to them. They're not going to appreciate a wishy-washy message. We need to listen and allow them to speak and ask questions and tell us what they think as often as they need to during that time. And then we need to show them how the product or service will enable them to capture people's interest and attention, will help them become a bit better communicator, or their company become a better communicator. We need to tap into all those things that they like doing and they like appreciating. We need to show them that this is why you want to, you know, buy my service or my product or come my way, because you're going to get to be all of these things or do all of these things better. Okay, so I added a new slide in here about how you can sell yourself, because a lot of people who are doing interviewing always ask me, how do I sell myself with my strengths? So you could tell vivid stories about what you've accomplished. You could share the moments in time that tie back to a question. You could listen carefully to provide relevant examples, right? You can briefly teach someone, like the person you're talking to, something interesting. I say briefly because you don't want to overdo it in an interview situation. You could influence the other person to buy into what buy into you and what you're saying, because you have natural influence as a communicator. You can capture their attention with humor. You know, you have the ability to direct and redirect the conversation as needed. And that's important in an interview to make sure y'all stay on a positive, good track. You can paint those verbal pictures of what you'll be able to do for the person or the organization, for the team. You can offer to contribute some writing and speaking, you know, examples before you start, or even, you know, during the time when you first start at a new job. And you can offer your marketing, selling, influencing, ministry, and evangelist skills. Okay, so if we're out on the outside and we're trying to observe whether or not this person is actually a communicator or not, we want to ask ourselves things. Does this person seem to enjoy speaking? Is he or she writing very clearly? Are they talking a lot? Is their communication crystal clear and colorful? Is, you know, he or she entertaining? If so, then maybe we've identified that this is a top 5 strength for them. And then I listed a bunch of words that seem to resonate really well with communicators. But the thing to listen to the most, guys, is when they're using colorful words, right? Words that are not your typical words that people are using. I'm gonna move this bar. I can't see my titles. Okay. So as a strong communicator, I've listed a bunch of considerations here, right? Talking a lot results in poor communication. Just simply talking a lot. So you want to listen to find out what is most relevant to speak about. And that way people will come to listen to you. And you got to think about the environment that is too, if it's one-on-one, if it's in a team setting, or if it's in a public communication setting, or radio. You know, different types of communication for those different areas. Communicating substance will make you the most effective communicator. And that's what Sandy said earlier, is that when she hears somebody telling stories and she hears that clear, concise communication, but it has an impact on her life and makes a change, or she can learn something from it, that's where you know that someone with communication has the biggest impact. When you are thinking out loud, sometimes you're going to be going weavy, which causes the other person to just lose interest. I dated someone briefly that did this, and I was like, holy hell, you're going to have to think about what you need to say first and then say it, because by the time you get to the point, I'm no longer listening. Okay. You know, you want to watch being overly impulsive with your communication. So you want to self-edit the thoughts before you speak. You guys, you think so fast and you communicate so fast. You really can take a few seconds. You can really take a couple breaths, and it's not going to make any bit of difference to the rest of us. You always want to make sure you have a story that you're telling and stay focused so that you're getting the point across clearly and effectively. If you're repeatedly using a crutch word, go to your thesaurus, expand your vocabulary, get some new words. You want to practice anytime you get a chance. This could be one-on-one conversation, team setting, or even in a public setting. You want to focus on not being the loudest person in the room and the most chatty person in the room, but being the most articulate and captivating. That will make you the best communicator you can be. And I wrote down here to just realize that not everybody else is great at you are like staying focused onto the storyline that you have. So, you know, you just don't want to expect other people to communicate as well as you, or to even stay on point as well as you. You can always help them, bring them back. But it's a false expectation to expect other people to be as good at that as you are. And then another key thing is to notice when a story that you're telling is increasing the enlightenment and when it's actually detracting from the point. There's just certain places and times to tell, I would say, like the amount of story that you're telling, right? Sometimes you got to solidify and make the story much more concise. And then other times it's actually beneficial to expand it. So you got to play with that.
You don't need to fight your own memory where you're like, oh, was it a green truck or a blue truck that I was... Like people do that, and I'm like, is it a need to the story? It doesn't matter if it's green or blue. It really doesn't matter.
Right, pick a color.
Yeah, whatever. You say whatever, and I will agree with you. Sure, it was blue. I wasn't there.
And this is where the analytical people get really mad at you, because they're like, no, it was red. They're like, oh God, it doesn't matter. All right, I've written a couple things on collaboration. You know, collaboration is not one-way communication. It is to ensure that there is a healthy balance of listening and communicating, you know, listening and building on what others say. You know, soliciting feedback is really good, right? To improve your collaboration and communication. I know that's tough, but it's good for everybody to solicit feedback at one point or another in your career. You know, helping others communicate clearly and find their voice is something that communicators really have a specialty in doing. And you can even help people pick out a perfect word. You know, that's really helpful, because a lot of people who don't have communication, just they're not going to think of it. And you guys get to carry the conversation when there's other people who are uncomfortable carrying the conversation, or who are just more private or more introverted. You guys can really help those people on your team. So as a partner to a communicator, I would really need to listen to that communicator and be open to what he or she is saying. I also need to focus on communicating in a positive, clear way so that they appreciate what I'm saying. They appreciate when you talk through your thoughts aloud versus in your head. So even if you just give them a couple of different milestones in your thinking, if you're introverted, that's helpful. Or you can just let them know, look, I'm thinking for a minute, give me a second. At least let them know what's going on so that they don't just get silence. You want to bring out their best communication, which is telling them when they're communicating something that's really having an impact or is really meaningful or is communicated well. And let them know, you know, which stories are most captivating and why, so they can continue to get better at their communication. Let them know when you most appreciate their communication and the topics you appreciate them conveying. Okay? And then asking for their help in communicating or influencing when you need it. These are all things that will engage a partner with communication. I've listed out some good partners for you guys that are communicators. So if you need a certain thing done, you can look for people with certain strengths to get those things accomplished. Okay. And just listed a few things as to be successful in relationships with communication. You may play the role of direction setter in your relationship. It depends on your other partner's strengths, but just know that you might have to be the direction setter. You always want to make sure you really understand exactly what it is the other person is trying to say, or the point they're getting to, sort of the underlying root stuff before you start communicating. Otherwise, you'll be communicating a lot on a point that they don't care about, and that is going to be frustrating. So you can ask questions to get the context. You're going to build trust in that relationship by listening. The other person has to be able to trust that you want to listen to them as well. Okay, so let the other person finish his or her thoughts, and let the other person process before responding. Relax and wait. Your point will get across, I promise you, at the right time. And the more time you're taking to think about it, the better it'll be anyway. And then especially sensitive topics. Slowly and deliberately communicate sensitive topics. Remember, deliberate is the opposite of you. So this is just something you're not going to want to do. But when it comes to sensitive topics, you just have to slow down and wait a minute. Relationship building is built on actually taking time for the person. You know, whenever we rush with people, we don't really accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. People take patience. Okay. And as a leader, there's some great things that you can do with the communication strength. You can clearly and concisely communicate the overall big picture, strategic vision, and direction for the team so they can get going. You can speak, influence, and evangelize for your teams and for the people on your teams. You can provide others with speaking, public speaking opportunities as well, which is important to think about as a communicative leader, because you're going to want to take them all, but there's going to be, you know, a need for other people to be able to do that as well. You want to help your team members communicate effectively. You can teach them how to present and public speak well and how to get out in front of people. You can help your team members express their thoughts and ambitions. You can inspire your team members to action. That's that influence. You know, collecting the team's accomplishments and sharing those stories is really going to evangelize the team. Any other thoughts about how to lead effectively with communication?
Brandy, just really quickly, first of all, this has been an amazing learning experience.
Awesome.
One blind spot I've seen effective communicators display is forgetting to draw out their audience to ask for input. Sometimes I think communicators get so caught up in what they're sharing and their storytelling and what they have to offer that, and they see the engagement in the audience. People are shaking, nodding their head and smiling and seeming to share their agreement with what's being said. But sometimes I think a blind spot as a communicator may take that engagement as agreement, or we're good, or yes, this is the right direction, or whatever it is, and that may not be the case. And so I think it's important for communicators to slow down and check in with people and ask for input and ask for feedback and get some dialogue going, even if it's silent, so that the communicator doesn't falsely assume that everyone is on the same page.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think also practicing ahead of time is good, and getting that feedback ahead of time. Because I've noticed, Sandy, like when communicators get into that moment, like my last boss was a communicator, and when he got on the spotlight up there in front, he just communicated outwardly. And he had the confidence to take the questions in, but for whatever reason, it was like communication mode came on, and he just went like this and really felt the need to get everything out, you know, and it was just harder for him to take the questions in and answer it. And part of it's because he was so strategic, and he was strategically wanting to put a certain message out there and didn't want to address certain things in that setting, you know? And so maybe another way to to maximize communication is to do the pull-off sessions, right? If you have these concerns, if you have these things, if you'd like to talk about this, if you disagree with what I'm saying, then let's have that session here. Maybe that would be an option to, like you said, get the feedback, but to do it in a more private setting as well, that the communication person might be more comfortable with.
Right, right. And I think another thought related to that is communicators need to be intentional about creating safety, creating safe spaces for people to maybe even push back or to offer a different approach or to disagree.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's just part of communicating, disagreeing.
It is.
Yeah, and the more comfortable that the communication person is with their ability to navigate, right, the disagreement, the stronger that communicator, the stronger the impact the communicator will have on the audience. That's right. For those of you like you, Sandy, who is a natural coach like me, I put some bullet points for us here, right? We want to help communicators communicate their very best. We want to recommend courses and places for them to practice. We want to encourage them to practice on their friends and help them locate forums where they can public speak to an audience. We help them find their voice, right? That topic that really resonates, or topics that resonates with other people based on who they are. We talk to them about their approach and you know, doing things in a healthy way. Yeah, I like to ask them probing questions. It forces them to communicate about it and become better at that communication. And then these are just the action items that if you are a communicator, you want to make sure you're doing these things every single day to stay in your communication strength.
I have an upcoming interview. This is one reason why I wanted to be on this call, was because it has to do with communicating, creative ideas.
Okay, so you're learning from the communicator today. That's awesome.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm supposed to become, one. And you had me on almost all the points, except for when it says you look forward to getting up in front of people. That one's a little bit more difficult. I don't mind telling stories, especially if it's one-on-one or a small group, but once there's a microphone and a stage and people out there, that's a little different.
But which rank is communication for you?
You know what? I actually don't have that list in front of me. I just know my top 5.
Okay.
I'm sure it's pretty high because a lot of these points are hitting right around there too.
And you said your woo is really high.
Yeah, it's number 5. Significance is in there, belief, individualization is number 1.
Okay. The rest of the slides you guys have all seen. Oh, not this one. Thank you, Brad, for helping me. Yay! For making this session meaningful. I appreciate it. But the rest of it you guys have all seen. I just listed where you can get the assessment if you haven't yet taken it, the languages you can take it in, the app that you can download on your phone to get daily inspirational messages. I listed instructions to signing up to my app that I've developed, my web app, I should say, my website that I've developed, so you guys can get additional insights on your strengths if you haven't done that yet. There's a YouTube channel out there for you. There's books you can go get if you're looking to use your strength to do certain things like build relationships or influence, sell, lead, etc. And just so you guys know, just to mention, 10% of everything I do out here in the world goes to Operation Underground Railroad. They're a wonderful organization who helps rescue human trafficked children. And then here's my information. Any other questions or thoughts before we let you all go today?
Yeah, thank you very much for the time and for the depth of it. Sometimes it's like, ooh, absorption.
Yes.
Is a little bit, but I'm trying to focus on key points and
Yep.
Also, it's just very well done.
Yes, well said, David. Thank you, Brandy, for supporting us. and sharing all of your knowledge so we can skill up.
My pleasure, Sandy. Thank you so much for joining, both of you guys, all of you guys. And I will post this on my YouTube channel so that you guys have a copy of the recording. I will also post the slides on LinkedIn today, and I'll try to copy all your names on there so that you guys have the slides as well. Anything else that you need from me?
Is your YouTube channel also going to be on that notification?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What's the subject for next week?
Learner. I want to do learner next week. It's similar to
Learner.
communication, but different. So I want to tackle learner.
That's you.
I know it's an easy one. I have a heavy week, so I'm like, I need an easy one.
Thanks, Brandy. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next Monday.
God bless.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.